Scripture portions of the day. Day 336.
Matthew 18, OANT. And in that hour the disciples approached to join Yeshua, and they were saying, "Who is truly the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And Yeshua called a boy and stood him in their midst. And he said, "Truly I say to you, unless you are converted and become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever therefore humbles himself like this boy will be greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever will receive such as this boy in my name receives me. And everyone who commits an offense against one of these little ones who believes in me, it were profitable for him that a donkey's millstone would be hung around his neck, and he would sink in the depths of the ocean. Woe to the world because of the offenses, for it is necessary that offenses will come, but woe to the man by whom the offenses will come. But if your hand and your foot subverts you, cut it off and cast it from you, for it is better for you that you enter life as lame and as maimed, rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet, that you would fall into eternal fire. And if your eye subverts you, pull it out and throw it from you, for it is better that you would enter life with 1 eye, rather than having 2 eyes, that you would fall into Gehenna of fire. Take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say that their angels in heaven always see the face of the Father who is in heaven. And the Son of Man has come to save whatever has been lost. How does it seem to you, if a man has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray, does he not leave the 99 in the mountain and go and search for the one lost? And if he should find it, certainly I say to you that rejoices in more than in the 99 that did not stray. Just so, it is not the will before your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. But if your brother wrongs you, reprove him between you and him alone. And he hears you, you have gained your brother. But if he hears you not, take 1 or 2 with you, that the mouth of 2 to 3 witnesses with every word will be established. But if he will not hear them, tell the assembly. And if he does not hear the assembly, then him be to you as a tax collector and a heathen. And truly I say to you, everything whatsoever you will bind on earth will have been bound in heaven, and everything you will release on earth will have been released in heaven. Again I say to you, the 2 of you will agree on earth about any matter which they will request, and it will be done for them in the presence of the Father who is in heaven. For the 2 or 3 are assembled in my name, there I am in the midst. And then Kepha approached him and said, My Lord, if my brother sins an offense against me, how many times will I forgive him? 7 times? And Yeshua said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but unto 70 times 7 each. Therefore the King of heaven is accompanied by a man who was a king, wanting to take the account of his servants. And when he began to take it, they begat him who had owed 10,000 talents. And when he had nothing to pay, the Lord commanded that he would be sold, and his wife and children, and everything that he would pay. Falling down, the servant worshipped him, and he said, My Lord, be patient with me, I shall pay you everything. And the Lord of the servant was moved with pity, and he released him, forgiving his debt. But that servant went out and found one of his associates that owed him 100 denarii, and he seized him and throttled him. And he said to him, Give me which you owe me. And the associates fell down before his feet, begging him and saying to him, Be patient with me, and I shall pay you. But he was not willing. But he went and he cast him into prison until he would give him whatever he owed him. But when their associates saw what had happened, it was very grievous to them, and they came and revealed to their Lord everything that had happened. Then his Lord called him and said, You wicked servant, I forgave you all that entire debt because of you begging me. Was it not incumbent upon you also that you'd have mercy on the associates just as I have mercy on you? And his Lord was angry and discovered him to the scourgers until they would pay everything he owed him. So my Father who is in heaven will do to you unless you each forgives his brothers his offenses from your heart.
Deuteronomy 30, Septuagint. And it shall come to pass, when all these things shall come upon thee, the blessings and the curse, which I have set before thy face, and thou shalt call them to mind, and among the nations, wherein Jehovah shall have scattered thee, and shall return to Jehovah thy Elohim, and shall hearken to his voice, according to all things which I have charged thee this day, with all thy heart, with all thy soul. Then Jehovah shall heal thy iniquities, and shall pity thee, and shall again gather thee out of the nations, among which Jehovah has scattered thee. If thy dispersion be from one end of heaven to the other, thence will Jehovah thy Elohim gather thee, thence will Jehovah thy Elohim take thee. And Jehovah thy Elohim shall bring thee in from thence and into the land which thy fathers have inherited, and thou shalt inherit it, and he will do thee good, and multiply thee above thy fathers. And Jehovah shall purge thy heart and the heart of thy seed, to love Jehovah thy Elohim with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and that thou may live. And Jehovah thy Elohim will put these curses upon thine enemies, and upon those that hate thee, who have persecuted thee. And thou shalt return and hearken to the voice of Jehovah thy Elohim, and shalt keep his commands, all that I charge you thee this day. And Jehovah thy Elohim shall bless thee in every work of thy hand, in the offspring of thy body, in the offspring of thy cattle, in the fruits of thy land, because Jehovah thy Elohim will again rejoice over thee for good, for he rejoiced over thy fathers. If thou wilt hearken to the voice of Jehovah thy Elohim, to keep his commandments, and his ordinances, and his judgments, written in the book of the law, if thou turn to Jehovah thy Elohim with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, for this command which I give you this day is not grievous, neither is it far from you. It is not in heaven above, as there were some one saying, who shall go up for us into the heaven, and shall take for us, and we will hear and do it. Neither is it beyond the sea, saying, who will go over for us to the other side of the sea, and take it for us, and make it audible to us, and we will do it. The word is very near to thee, in thy mouth, in thy heart, and in thine hands, to do it. Behold, I have set before thee this day life and death, good and evil. If thou wilt hearken to the commands of Jehovah thy Elohim, which I command thee this day, to love Jehovah thy Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to keep his ordinances and judgments, then you shall live, and shall be many in number. And Jehovah thy Elohim shall bless thee in the land in which thou goest to inherit it. But if thy heart change, and thou wilt not hearken, and thou shalt go astray and worship other gods, and serve them, I declare to you this day that ye shall utterly perish, and ye shall by no means live long upon the land, into which ye go over Jordan to inherit it. I call both heaven and earth to witness this day against you. I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Choose thou life, that thou and thy seed may live, to love Jehovah thy Elohim, to hearken to his voice, to cleave to him. For this is thy life, and the length of thy days, for thou shouldest dwell in the land which Jehovah swore to thy fathers, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, to give them.
Esther 7, Septuagint. So the king and Aman went to drink with the queen. And the king said to Esther at the banquet of the second day, as was it, Queen Esther, what is thy request, and thy petition, and it shall be done for thee, up to half of the kingdom. And she answered and said, if I found favor in your sight of the king, let my life be granted to my petition, and my people be request. And thou, I, and my people are sold for destruction and pillage and slavery, both we and our children, for bondmen and bondwomen. And I consented not to this, for the slanderer is not worthy of the king's palace. And the king said, who is this that has dared to do this thing? And Esther said, the adversaries Aman. Which wicked man? Then Aman was troubled before the king and the queen. And the king rose up from the banquet to go into the garden. And Aman began to entreat the queen, and he saw that he was in the evil case. And the king returned from the garden, and Aman had fallen upon the bed, entreating the queen. And the king said, Wilt thou even force my wife in thy house? And when Aman heard it, he changed countenance. And Bugatha, one of the chamberlains, said to the king, Behold, Aman has also prepared a gallows for Mordecai, who spoke concerning the king, and the gallows, 50 cubits high, has been set up in the premises of Aman. And the king said, Let him be hanged thereon. So Aman was charged on the gallows that had been prepared for Mordecai, and the king's wrath was appeased. Esther 8, Septuagint. And in that day King Artaxerxes gave to Esther all that belonged to Aman the slanderer, and Mordecai was called by the king, for Esther had shown that he was related to her. And the king took the ring which he had given away from Aman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai over all that had been Aman's. And she spoke yet again to the king, and fell at his feet, and besought him to do away the mischief of Aman, and all that had been done against the Jews. Then the king stretched out to Esther the golden scepter, and Esther arose to stand near the king. And Esther said, If it seems good to thee, and I have found favor in thy sight, let an order be sent that letters sent by Aman may be reversed, that were written for the destruction of the Jews, who are in thy kingdom. For how shall I be able to look upon the affliction of my people, and how shall I be able to survive the destruction of my kindred? And the king said to Esther, If I have been given and freely granted thee all that was Aman's, and hanged him on the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews, what dost thou further seek? Write me also in my name, as I seem good to you, and seal it with a ring, that whatsoever orders you are written at the command of the king, and is sealed with my ring, it is not lawful to gainsay them. So the scribes were called to the first month, which is Nisan, in the 23rd day of the same year, and orders were given to the Jews, whatsoever the king had commanded, to the local governors and chiefs of the satraps, and India, even to Ethiopia, 127 satraps, according to the several provinces, according to their dialects. And they were written by order of the king, and sealed with his ring, and they sent the letters to the posts. Whereas he charged them to use their own laws in every city, and to help each other, and to treat each other adversaries, and those who attack them. They also pleased. On one day in all the kingdom of Artaxerxes, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is Adar. And let the copies be posted in the conspicuous places throughout the kingdom, and let her and all the Jews be ready against this day, to fight against their enemies. So the horsemen went forth with haste to perform the king's command. And the ordinances was also published in Susa. And Mordecai went forth, and robed in the royal apparel, and wearing a golden crown and diadems of fine purple linen. And the people in Susa saw it and rejoiced, and the Jews had light and gladness. In every city and province wherever the ordinances was published, wherever proclamation took place, the Jews had joy and gladness, feasting and mirth, and many of the Gentiles were circumcised and became Jews, for the fear of the Jews.
Proverbs 23, Septuagint. If thou sit to sup at the table of a prince, consider attentively to the things set before thee, and apply thy hand, knowing that it behooves thee to prepare such meats. But if thou art very insatiable, desire not his provisions, for these belong to a false life. If thou art poor, measure not themselves with rich men, but refrain thyself in thy wisdom. If thou shouldest fix thy eyes upon him, he will disappear for wings
like an eagle's are prepared for him, and he returns to the house of his master. Sup not with an envious man, neither desire his meats, for he eats and drinks as if anyone should swallow a hair. And do not bring him into thyself, nor eat thy morsel with him, for he will vomit it up, and spoil thy fair words. Say nothing in the ears of a fool, lest at any time he sneer at thy wise words. Remove not the ancient landmarks, and enter not upon the possession of the fatherless. For Jehovah is their Redeemer, he is mighty, and will plead their cause with thee. Apply thine heart to instruction, and prepare thine ears for words of discretion. Refrain not the chastening of a child, for if thou beat him with a rod, he shall not die. For thou shalt beat him with a rod, and shalt deliver his soul from death. Son, if thy heart be wise, thou shalt also gladden my heart, and thy lips shall converse with my lips, if they be right. Let not thine heart envy sinners, but be thou in the fear of Jehovah all the day. For if thou shouldest keep these things which thou hast posterity, and thy hope shall not be removed. Hear, my son, and be wise, and rightly direct the thoughts of thine heart. Be not a wine-bibber, neither continue long at feasts and purchases of flesh. For every drunkard and whoremonger shall be poor, and every sluggard shall clothe himself with tatters and ragged garments. Hearken, my son, to the father, and begot thee. Despise not thy mother, because she is grown old. A righteous father brings up his children well, and his soul rejoices over a wise son. Let thy father and thy mother rejoice over thee, and let her that bore thee be glad. My son, give me thine heart, and let thine eyes observe my ways. For a strange woman, a strange house, is a vessel full of holes, and a strange well is narrow. Who has woe? Who trouble? Who has quarrels? Who has vexation and disputes? Who has bruises without cause? Whose eyes are livid? Are not those of them that stay long at wine? Are not those of them that haunt the places where banquets are? Be not drunk with wine, but converse with the just men, and converse with them openly. For if thou shouldest set thine eyes on bowls and cups, thou shalt afterwards go more naked than a pestle. But at last such a one stretches himself out, as one smiteth by a serpent, and the venom is diffused through him, as by a horned serpent. Whenever thine eyes shall behold a strange woman, then thy mouth shall speak perverse thing, and thou shalt lie as in the midst of the sea, and as a pilot in the great storm. And thou shalt say, They smote me, and I was not pained. They mocked me, and I knew it not. Then it will be morning, and I will go and seek those with whom I may go in company,